Welcome back to Chapter 16 in the judicial branch. Today we're going to talk about the structure of the federal judicial system. The first thing that we need to look at and be aware of is how the federal judicial system was actually established. What actually establishes the federal judicial system? If you look in the Constitution, Article 3 creates the federal courts, or rather just the Supreme Court. In 1789, the Judiciary Act was passed by Congress to create a system of constitutional courts, also called or referred to as the Article 3 courts. So now, in addition to the Supreme Court, there are 13 federal courts of appeal and 94 federal district courts. There are also thousands of state and local courts, but that's another topic for another time. Congress has also created some of the legislative courts, such as the Court of Military Appeals and the Court of Claims, as well as the Tax Court. And these are for specialized purposes and not what we're going to discuss today. Here is a nice, lovely chart that illustrates for you how the federal court system is structured. If you will notice, the Supreme Court sits at the very top. They are the final court, the last court, the court of last resort. You can go no farther than the Supreme Court of the United States. Court cases will typically start out in the district courts, one of those 94. I realize the numbers are incorrect, but most court cases will begin in the district courts. And then if you are unhappy with the decision or you want to appeal to a higher court, you can go to the Court of Appeals, and you eventually can get your court case to the Supreme Court, but that is as far as you are able to go. One of the most important terms that you're going to hear mentioned several times and that you need to pay close attention to is that of jurisdiction. Jurisdiction defines authority. So for example, Mr. Cheney has jurisdiction over South Forsyth High School. Dr. Bearden, the superintendent of Forsyth County Schools, has jurisdiction over Forsyth County Schools. Just as jurisdiction applies to authority figures, it also applies to the court system. Original jurisdiction simply states the jurisdiction of courts that hear a case first, usually in a trial. The district courts of the United States, as well as the Supreme Court of the United States, both have original jurisdiction, meaning any court case can begin in either level of the courts. Then you have what's called appellate jurisdiction, and this means that cases are brought to these courts to them only on appeal from the lower courts. These courts, the Court of Appeals, never actually review the factual record. They're just looking at the legal issues involved to see if they should either uphold the lower court's decision, remand the case back down to a lower court, a different lower court, or to send it on up to the Supreme Court. So there you have it. There are 3 levels to the federal court system. Most cases will start out in the district courts. They will make their way to the Court of Appeals, potentially. And the court of last resort, or the Supreme Court, is the final decision in all court cases if they ever reach that point. In the next video or in the next lecture, we'll look at what each court actually does, facts or brief information about each court.